What is the dragon's throne built upon? Gold, jade, or the bones of 10,000 men? And what forges the soul of that dragon? The will of an emperor, or the shattered memories of a beggar boy? How does an orphan, who couldn't even afford a straw mat to bury his parents, become the master of an entire realm? How does a man who once had to shave his head and become a monk just to survive, overthrow a powerful empire and found his own dynasty, one that would last for nearly 300 years? And the most terrifying question, the question at the heart of our investigation today: what turns a national hero, a savior, into one of history's most brutal tyrants, willing to slaughter tens of thousands of the very men who fought and died for him? This is the secret histories of Zhu Yuanzhang, the founder of the Ming Dynasty. Today, we open the 3 dark case files, the 3 defining chapters that forged the paradoxical life of the Beggar Emperor. Case file number 1, Child of the Apocalypse. To understand this complex man, we must first open the first file, which is also his deepest scar. In the 1340s, the end of the Yuan Dynasty, the court is corrupt, taxes are crushing, and the Yellow River repeatedly breaks its banks, causing horrific floods. But this collapse wasn't just an act of nature. It was nurtured by a brutal system of oppressions. The Mongol-led Yuan dynasty has established a 4-class social structure, where the southern Han Chinese, like Zhu Yuanzhang's family, were placed at the very bottom. They were treated as second-class citizens in their own homeland. And after the floods, the worst arrives: famine and plague. In a poor village in Hongwu, the 16-year-old boy named Zhu Yuanzhang is witnessing a scene that no enemy on the battlefield could ever make him forget. He watches helplessly as his father dies. A few days later, his eldest brother is gone, and then his mother succumbs to the plague. It all happens within 2 weeks. Poverty not only took his family, it stripped them of their final dignity. Zhu Yuanzhang and his surviving brother had no land to bury their parents. They had to beg a kind neighbor for a small plot of land to lay their dead to rest. Orphaned, homeless, Zhu Yuanzhang had to seek refuge in the only place that might offer a roof and a bowl of gruel, the Guangzhou Temple. He shaved his head, becoming a novice monk, not for enlightenment, but for survival. What did this ultimate suffering and loss plant in the boy's mind? The despair to give up, or a burning hatred and an unquenchable will to live? Life in the temple was no sanctuary. As a newcomer, he did the hardest chores and was bullied by other monks. But even this place couldn't withstand the chaos of the era. After just 50 days, the temple ran out of food. The monks were forced to become wandering beggars to survive. Zhu Yuanzhang, only 17, was once again cast out. But this time, he wasn't just a novice. He was a wandering mendicant monk. For 3 years, he roamed the Huai River basin, witnessing the very worst of a society in collapse. He learned to read people in a single glance, to know who might offer a piece of bread and who might beat him. He learned to survive in a world without law, only the law of the strong. These years were the cruelest university, forging a Zhu Yuanzhang who was suspicious, ruthless, but also incredibly resilient and a keen judge of character. He learned that in this world, mercy was a luxury. Only absolute power could truly protect him. Case file number 2, from rebel to conqueror. After 3 years of wandering, Zhu Yuanzhang returned to the Hongwu temple, only to find it burned to the ground in a rebellion. The path of a monk was over. Destiny has chosen another for him. In 1352, at the age of 24, Zhu Yuanzhang finally finds his path. He joins the Red Turban Rebellion, one of the many peasant uprisings against the Yuan. He didn't join as a leader, but as a common foot soldier. But his talent shone immediately. While other rebel leaders were prudish thugs, Zhu displayed superior intelligence and analytical skill. His commander, Guo Jixing, a rebel leader with some foresight, quickly recognized this talent. He not only promoted Zhu Yuanzhang, but also married his adopted daughter, Ma Xiuying, who would later become Empress Ma to him. This was the first turning point. Zhu Yuanzhang now had status. But he knew that to become a real power, he needed his own base of operations. And he set his sights on an impossible target, the capture of Zhuzhou, a well-defended city. Instead of a frontal assault, he led only a few dozen men, snuck into the city, and persuaded the local leaders to join him. With his intellect and charisma, he took a city without firing a single arrow. After this victory, he recruited 2 men who would become his greatest generals, Suda and Tang He. With the skill learned on the streets, combined with his innate military genius, he quickly rose through the ranks. He recruits talented men, builds his forces, and becomes one of the most formidable warlords. Unlike other rebel leaders who knew only plunder, Zhu Yuanzhang soon proved himself a visionary strategist. He commanded his army with absolute discipline, forbidding any looting from the populace. He wasn't just conquering land, he was winning the hearts of the people. But to become the supreme leader, he had to face his arch rival, the king of Han, Chen Youlian. Chen Youlian was Zhu's opposite, also from a commoner background, but arrogant, brutal, and in command of the most powerful navy of the time. His fleet consisted of massive tower ships, giant 3-story vessels that were like mobile fortresses on water. In the summer of 1363, the chess match that would decide the fate of China was set at Poyang Lake, the country's largest freshwater lake. Chen Youlian arrived with a fleet of 600,000 men, confident he would crush Zhu's army of just 200,000. Outnumbered and outgunned, Zhu knew a direct confrontation was suicide. So what did he do? He turns his enemy's strength into a fatal weakness. The tower ships were powerful, but they was also incredibly clumsy and slow. In the first days of the battle, Zhu used his small, light, and agile boats to conduct guerrilla warfare. They would strike quickly and retreat, leaving Chen's massive fleet unable to maneuver like a clumsy giant trying to swat a fly. Chen's patience was slowly worn down. But this was just prelude. Zhu was waiting for a supreme weapon from nature itself, the wind. When the northeasterly wind began to blow, just as he calculated, he unleashed his decisive blow. A suicide fleet of small fishing boats filled with dry reeds, gunpowder, and oil was set ablaze and sent crashing into Chen Youlian's interlinked tower ships. The fire, fanned by the wind, exploded into a terrifying firestorm. Poyang Lake literally became a sea of fire. Chen Youlian's proud fortresses were incinerated amidst screams and chaos. Chen himself, trying to break through the encirclement, was killed by a stray arrow. This seemingly impossible victory was more than a military triumph. Zhu Yuanzhang proved to the world that intellect and patience could defeat brute force. The gambit at Poyang Lake eliminated his greatest rival and opened the door to the Dragon Throne. Case file number 3. The Dragon's Rage. In 1368, Zhu Yuanzhang completes his conquest, ascends the throne in Nanjing, establishes the Ming Dynasty, and takes the raid title Hongwu. The beggar boy was now the son of heaven. But once seated at the pinnacle of power, with no external enemies left, the demons within him began to stir. The demons nurtured by years of starvation, by loss, and by the fear of betrayal, he was haunted. Everyone he looked, he saw potential threats to his throne, threats that could send him back to his beggar's life. And he believed the most dangerous threat was his founding marshals, his brothers in arms, the very men who knew his humble origins. And so began one of the most systematic and brutal purges in Chinese history. To legalize his brutality, he established the Jinyiwei, the infamous embroiderer's uniform guard. This was his secret police. They had the power to arrest, torture, and execute anyone without going through the normal justice system. They were the emperor's eyes, ears, and blade, spreading terror across the land. The Huiyang case, 1380. The first chancellor of the Ming Dynasty was accused of treason. The Hongwu emperor used this as a pretext for a massive investigation. The case dragged on for 10 years. Not only was Hu's family executed, but over 15,000 people deemed part of his clique was also killed. After this case, Zhu Yuanzhang abolished the position of chancellor entirely, concentrating all state power in his own hands. The Lan Yu case, 1393. Lan Yu, his most brilliant and celebrated general, who was instrumental in driving out the Mongols, was accused of plotting a rebellion. As a result, Lan Yu was brutally executed, and another 15,000 people, including many dukes and marquises, were executed in connection with the case. He brutally applied the law of 9 familial exterminations, killing all relatives in 9 degrees, completely wiping out the bloodlines of those he suspected. He had granted his marshals iron certificates, plaques that promised them immunity from execution. But then, he spent his rage finding creative ways to render those plaques useless. Perhaps, to Zhu Yuanzhang, the most reliable promise was one that never had to be kept, because its owners was no longer alive. Over his rage, an estimated 150,000 officials and their families were executed. He killed almost all the brothers who had fought alongside him, turning his court into a place where silence was the only key to survival. So, was Zhu Yuanzhang a great ruler or a monstrous tyrant? The answer, like the man himself, is not simple. The truth is, he was both. He was the great ruler who overthrew foreign domination, reunified a shattered China, and enacted sweeping land reforms to help the poor. Under his rule, the population recovered and the economy was restored. He laid a solid foundation for a dynasty that would last for nearly 3 centuries. But he was also a tyrant whose cruelty was bred from the tragedies of his own childhood. This is the answer to it all. The fear of starvation and death, the trauma of not having land to bury his parents, never left him. Even as an emperor, he was still the orphan boy Zhu Zhongba, terrified that everything would be taken away. That terror morphed into a sickness, a paranoia. He believed the only way to protect his throne was to eliminate every threat, real or imagined. The greatest tragedy of Zhu Yuanzhang is not that he fought the dragon, but that in the process, he became the dragon himself. He built an empire, but he could never build peace within his own soul. The story of Zhu Yuanzhang is a grim reminder that sometimes the greatest demons are not external enemies, but the unhealed scars within. If Zhu Yuanzhang's eldest son, the benevolent crown prince Zhu Biao, had not died young, do you think his influence could have tempered his father's cruelty and changed the bloody history of the Ming Dynasty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to subscribe to Legend Alley. See you in the next story. Bye!